Nobody wants to be the one to bring it up.
I think folks sometimes are afraid to hurt somebody's feelings when they have that difficult conversation.
The society that we're in sometimes makes us question ourselves.
I want to go ahead and say what needs to be said. I hope it don't hurt their feelings, but if it does, oh well, I need to get it done because I need to move on to the next thing.
Say, Terry, you need to put some dirt on your stinking.
Welcome to another episode of the EMS Wizard Podcast. I have all of the crowd with me on this episode, except for who am I missing?
My running mate,
Oh,
we're waiting on the provisional ballots to get counted to see if we received any votes.
Zero.
if you didn't talk him out of not running, couldn't talk him out of it.
No. Mm-mm.
Oh, well,
I tried, I tried. I told him if
Martin,
he got me a shirt, I would support, but didn't work.
hmm,
Martin, we
that's
didn't even
You didn't get my
advertise.
vote.
yeah, yeah. I almost got to the point like I feel like we're just independents. We don't have a whole lot of
Correct.
pulling the game. So
I wouldn't disagree with that. So,
I'm just here.
Just a
and
guest.
so it sounds like
Just a
there's a
girl.
difficult conversation that needs to be had.
that's
Uh
that's what I was thinking. Is sometimes we have to have those difficult conversations.
So how do we have those difficult conversations? That's, maybe so why are they difficult? Let's start off with that. What makes these conversations difficult? Let's peel back the layers of the onion and what makes these conversations difficult?
Nobody wants to be the one to bring it up. That's what makes them difficult, depending on the topic.
If people, I think folks sometimes are afraid to hurt somebody's feelings when they have that difficult conversation. Maybe I'm saying something to you that I think that you don't want to hear, and it's not just do you want to hear it, but how I say that, how I have that difficult conversation, my comfort level with it.
And you might
Yeah.
think you're coming off the right way, and that person isn't receiving you the right way.
So it sounds like, some good communication basics, right? Just how it is you project yourself, how it is you present yourself, and how you are saying what it is you're trying to say. So how do we get good at that? How do we practice that?
I think you you practice it, and
Yes.
and yeah, I mean, if I'm going to have that difficult conversation, so if I'm going to have that conversation with Kathia because maybe her partner says that she has a little bit of a strong smell. She's trying the
Mm,
natural deodorant, which is
mm,
doesn't really do. Yeah. And so if I'm going to have that conversation with her because Walter is her partner and he doesn't want to hurt her feelings and so he comes to me. I'm her supervisor. And so I'm going to sit down and I think this is some of the stuff that we talk about, but this is the practicality of it. I'm going to talk with my network. Hey Mark, have you ever had to deal with this? This is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm not thinking, and then starting to run through some of those what ifs. Or I might call my best friend, he's dead, so I'm going to call my living best friend who is also not with us right now and say, hey, have you ever had this conversation? So I think working that network and getting some tips from folks, why reinvent the wheel, and then secondly doing that TSOP, doing a run through, doing a practice with somebody to say, hey, should this sound like, or what do you think?
Goes back to where we've talked about before. Those have those officer TSOPs, to practice some of those difficult things that we would have to face as a supervisory officer, as a management level officer, working with people.
Well, even as a partner, it should be a TSOP within the agency because some agencies are very supportive of you handling any small issues within your crew, your duty shift, or anything like that. And I think being able to run those TSOPs amongst your peers opens up that door to communicate better about difficult topics.
And, and I think if we look at the world right now, there's a lot of decisiveness that's making the news and not people bridging problems and trying to solve problems. And I was just where Kathia said, as partners, and it made me think of my one of my old work partners who would tease me sometimes when I came to work, not in a malicious way, but in that like caring way, where he would say, Terry Sheehy, did you put on deodorant this morning? I was a young dad who was showing up to work for my 8 a.m. shift change. I was showing up at like 7:58, and my daughter had been in and out of the hospital, had a whole bunch of issues. I'm like 21, 22 years old, figuring out the world. And Walter remembers that young Terry Sheehy from those days, that I really did not have my stuff together, but my partner would have that conversation. I think people are just afraid to have that conversation because, well, I don't want him to think that I'm a jerk. Whereas I probably view it as, I don't view you as a jerk. I view you as somebody who actually cares about me. If you're willing to have that conversation.
I think, I think we do care about each other, but I think the society that we're in sometimes makes us question ourselves because everything that we say offends someone. And it's not like Terry Sheehy when we were 20 years old, 21 years old, that we got offended as easy as we do today. And everyone gets offended because the wind's blowing east instead of west. And, I think that's what makes some of those conversations difficult too, because, you're just, not offending somebody and hurting somebody's feelings, but how are you going to offend them when you have that conversation with them? And I think that's where, those conversations before help with that, because then you don't stuttle and mutter to be able to have that conversation.
But Walter, I want to toss it right back to you because I'm listening to your answer, and where we start to talk about some of the different lenses, and I look at Walter, and I don't always think about the lens that Walter is in right now. I think about Walter's previous lens, but as that college program director, as that instructor, because I always talk about instructor methodology for me being one of the best classes, that old instructor methodology where you were having to develop objectives, where you were having to talk about how you remediated a student. And the class is still good. The focus has shifted, I think, from where it was, but I don't think it's too dissimilar as if you're that instructor having that conversation with a student. Or am I wrong, Walter?
No, no, no. I think you're correct, and I think you know, I used to have this statement sometimes that I'm not here for your feelings. I'm here to enforce the rules, and this is not a rule thing that we're having with that. But I'm not, and you have to take that with a grain of salt. The way I just said that, I'm not here for your feelings. I'm here to enforce the rules. But that is the supervisor's job sometimes, but we let feelings get involved with that. And having that conversation, just like you said, with even with the student, having that conversation with a student, you got to have some practice. You got to be able to learn that and try to pick it up and try to figure out how to have that, because it's still going to be maybe not a bad conversation, but even to somebody who has done this before, if I mean, I could come joke to you and say, Terry, you need to put some deodorant on. You're stinking. But Kathia, I've been like, hey,
I wouldn't have been offended.
Kathia, hey, Kathia,
Mm,
Kathia, come here for
mm.
just a minute. Let's come here, come here, come here. Hey, did you put deodorant on this morning? But, it,
I'd probably tell
so,
you I squirreled. Sorry.
right, right. I squirrel. But, that is, yeah, it's probably more awkward than difficult, for that one. More awkward, conversation that you have to have. You know,
I think
I
it's dependent
even
on the relationships you have with
it
certain
is.
people.
It is.
It, it definitely is. And so, Walter, I think you nailed it, that maybe sometimes it's more that awkward conversation, and not so much that it's that the difficulty is me having the chutzpah, the courage to have
Bless
that
you.
conversation. And yeah, thank you. And having that awkward conversation. But Kathia, I mean, Walter is in the classroom, but you're in the classroom teaching those sweet new young EMTs. And so, is there a good example in where you could say, to use Walter's words, maybe it's not that difficult conversation, that awkward conversation? Was there a topic or something that you're able to kind of rinse out and say, man, this I thought this was going to be an awkward conversation, but this person really accepted it? Or
You know, there is a couple that I've come across that have had the worst anxiety when it comes to T-stops. And I know that's a gray area topic to discuss, whether they're open about it or not. And it's been one of those, okay, are they aware that they have anxiety, that they're freezing up? Is this just something I'm seeing? Or two, are they aware, and is this a conversation we can have together or not? And it comes down to what you said, Terry, the courage to bring up that topic, because now you're on that fence of, what are we doing here? Am I telling them something they're aware of, or am I telling something that they're not aware of? So where do you navigate from there?
maybe that being respectful, and that's in doing research for a presentation at last year's state conference death notification. I talked with some different religious leaders of different backgrounds, Baptist and Catholic and Jewish and Muslim, and while there might be some slight subtle differences in how I use the term celebrate the death, but they mourn the death, or what their religious observance is. Almost universally, they talked about, are you being compassionate? Are you being kind? And so that maybe that's some of that is, are we being compassionate and kind when we have that difficult conversation?
And are we getting to know that person? Is it a judgmental factor that we're approaching this person in, or is it something that's factual? There's no feelings involved. And are we getting to know the reason behind it? Maybe they need more resources to resolve whatever that difficult topic is. Maybe we can get them in the right direction to do that, and it's no longer a difficult topic from that point. You've now helped them.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. Is it has a lot more to do with how do you know that person? How do you anticipate that person to respond, or how to take that? So first rule of all of it is know, especially in teaching, know your target audience. You're about to have this conversation with someone. How do you anticipate that they would respond? How is it that you would take it versus how that individual would take it? Take the shoe off and put it on the other foot, just to see, pre-game your conversation, right? Think it through. How would you anticipate them to respond, and how would you like to see yourself respond in that kind of conversation, in that kind of a scenario? So that's one benefit that you have to having these difficult conversations, is you can plan things out and kind of anticipate how the conversation is going to go. Now, are we always going to have that luxury? No, we're not always going to have that. We might have those, students on the first couple of nights or the first few nights of class, or those new hire employees. That's whenever you really have to lean on, like, both you guys just said, relying on the facts, being very compassionate, being empathetic, and, just treating them like another human being, instead of, how we typically approach these difficult conversations in a manner of, I'm just ready to get this conversation done and over with. I want to go ahead and say what needs to be said. I hope it don't hurt their feelings, but if it does, oh well, I need to get it done because I need to move on to the next thing. Right.
They're not my feelings. So
Right. It's not my feelings getting hurt. I ain't even worried about it. But we know we need to do better than that, right?
And let me interrupt, Walter, because something, these thoughts, they burn in my mind, and where not a problem that we usually have with some of our educational institutions. And when I say not this problem, but I was talking with an instructor in one of the urban areas, and they'd said that they had a student who was repeatedly late the first couple of classes. And at our educational institutions, there is no public transport. But in their urban area, there was, and the reason that the student was late was because of the time that they got off of their job, and then they took the bus from work, had to do a transfer, and then take a second bus to get to the college for class, and so they were walking in every night 15 minutes, and the instructor had said, kind of that knowing the student knowing, and how they asked the question, they jumped right in with, "Hey, if you're not going to take this class seriously, let me know because you need to be here on time because we're hitting this material," instead of maybe the way that we open that conversation. "Hey, noticed you've been late. Is there something that we can do? Is there something I can help you with?" And I think we, as the person beginning that awkward or difficult conversation, we set that tone with how we do it. And I could talk with the three of y'all, but that's not probably the lens that any of us have in our area. So just being open-minded, and again, that kindness. Walter, sorry I interrupted you.
Well, and that's kind of what I was going to go off of as well, is you don't know the person's background and what they is, so you need to start with some facts to be able to figure out, are they staying out of their car? People at EMS, we think they make good money, but it doesn't mean that they have enough money to be able to pay for children, for food,
That's
for
right.
families. Are they living in a car? Are they not able to take a shower because they slept on Terry's couch last night and couldn't get a shower because they had to be to work this morning? So, I think we have to look at that and getting an educated background before we walk in. I agree, and try to get some information. So, you always have to start the conversation to me with questions to be able to figure out what's going on, then to be able to let them know what's going on. Because, if I was to say, "Hey, Terry, hey, tell me what's been going on," and you went, "What do you mean what's been going on?" "Well, I noticed some of these things." "Well, man, hey, you know what? I don't have my wash machine's not working. I don't have any place to be to wash my clothes. I've been trying to go to we're on every last pair of clothes at this point in time. I'm getting ready to get, I can't even pay my rent." Then you have that, oh crap, here we just opened up this can of worms that we didn't realize, and now we've got the can of worms that we've opened. They're still our employee or still our student. How do we get them some assistance to now be able to help fix the problem that they're in? Because we know they have a problem. How do we fix it?
So it's that start with why. Why
Right.
why are we
Yes.
having
Was
this?
what correct?
Yeah.
I think that's my favorite way to start any of those conversations. One, you should be observant first. Is this a one moment kind of situation? If it's a second or third time, then it's time to start asking why. I never really jumped the gun the first noticing of something that could be a difficult conversation. It's always probably the second or third time I start asking why, because then there's something else going on behind it.
Right. And I still say we're post COVID. Everybody says, "Oh my God, here comes that word." But we're 4 years post COVID, but some things have changed. Some things have not changed. And if, when I was teaching more with you guys, more I started out that conversation with was, you remember the restaurant prior to COVID, after COVID, prior, the waitress prior to COVID, after COVID, or the waitress or waiter, now the EMT prior to COVID and after COVID. Kathia probably can answer some of those things as well. The personality of people that we are getting is not the same caliber of people we had 5 years ago. And, we're having to try, and I'm going to be, and I said this in a statement the other day, not only are you as a supervisor and or you as an educator are not only their boss, supervisor, whatever you are, you may become a father figure, a brother figure, a friend figure to these people now that, you try to steer clear of sometimes, but they don't have those things and they've lost touch with those things. So, the one that I can think of, we're talking about that difficult conversation, but we're talking about different conversation with people who, what the word that I'm looking for, but even something simple as soft skills that they don't know, um, and that's you know a difficult conversation to have. Somebody doesn't have soft skills. Somebody doesn't have compassion. Somebody doesn't understand that they are there for a patient or they're there to be able to help take care of someone. Another difficult conversation that you've got to be able to have with those. And some of these people have never learned that, do not know that, may have not even been to high school, because we're just getting to the point that we're seeing some of those students now that are hitting high school that were COVID kids who didn't have school for 2 years. So you're getting them into workforce.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that just adds to the complexity of the conversation.
Correct.
Because it's not a one size fits all. We might have really good conversations with some demographic or some group or some people in your shift or class, or and there's some that you cannot reach, you just cannot communicate with. Like I've always said, if I always had someone calling me out for a flaw or something that I can do better, something I can improve upon, I'm going to take that as a person that I'm always working to improve myself in some shape, form, or fashion. I'm going to appreciate that different perspective. I need that different perspective because that's the only way I'm going to be able to grow and improve upon, whatever that one thing is that I might not notice. But not everybody's that way. Terry could walk up to me like, dude, you stink. Go put some deodorant on. Oh, I didn't realize it. I'll be right back. And that's just how that communication would work with me, and it's effective. But that's not a one size fits all kind of thing. There's some people you would say that to, and you would end up in HR the next day.
Right.
Yes.
Because that's that relationship.
Right. And we still have people that are that way today. Don't get me wrong. We still have some people that are that way today that you can do that to. But you got that other side of the coin, the other side that, like you said, you'll be in HR tomorrow saying it that way. So yeah, I think again back to finding out the why before you jump into a conversation and try to figure out what's going on with it.
I think when it comes to like agency based, if we talk about hygiene, it's not a bad idea to just make sure there's hygiene products in the bathrooms. You might not have to have those conversations. Sometimes partners complain about bad breath. Well, maybe they can't afford to have their mouth done or fixed. So there's some mints in the truck and just keep them in there. Hey, do you want one? I'll put one in my mouth. Sometimes you can get around some of the hygiene hard topics by just providing some of the simple things that maybe they're unable to provide for themselves.
I always kept gum in the truck all the time. I always had chew gum.
Yep.
And to me, hearing you say that, Kathia, it's a lot like being a parent. And how do you, that adolescent child, you can lead them to water, but how do you get them to drink that water? And so, hey, I got some mints. You want a mint? Hey, I got some gum. You want some gum? Or, little things that, like you talking about, mouthwash or whatever, that the station, when I first became a supervisor, there were some common things that we kept in the restroom that were for everybody, and folks just took turns purchasing those things. And so you never had to worry about if you were out of, granted, it was like 12-in-1 shampoo and conditioner, and it was,
better than nothing.
Yeah, but yeah, some toothpaste in there, so that you always had those things. But one of the things that I think about is how would I want, if I pick the person who I love the most, and it'll be crushing for John to hear that it's not him, but how would I want somebody to talk to my daughter? How would I want somebody to talk to one of my brothers, or have that interaction with Mrs. Sheehy, or with, my parents when they were alive? And that can be that thing that one of my quotes the last couple months, time is that fire that we burn, and we might just want to rush through this conversation to get whatever the next important thing is, but how we treat our people and how that conversation is with our people, I would dare say that's probably the most important thing.
You know, you mentioned how would you want someone to mention something to your wife? And it reminded me of a moment at a those jumping gyms that you can go to,
You know, the trampoline park.
the
Yeah.
trampoline parks. Yes.
Not that old.
So
I know what you're talking about.
there was a woman, she had toilet paper or something out of her pants, and my wife was talking to me about her. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, why are you talking to me about her? And I walked up right behind her and I said, you have toilet paper hanging out of your pants. And I said, I'm going to stand here until you get it cleared up. She said, thank you so much. And I said, I'm pretty sure about 20 people, including my wife, just stood here and watched you have toilet paper hanging out of your butt. You've got to be able to do for others as you want done for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's that golden rule. I love living by it. I want to be treated a certain way, so I try to treat people that way.
Especially if I've got toilet paper hanging out the back of my pants.
I'll be the first one. I'm your friend. I will tell you if you've got a nugget in your nose. I will tell you if you've got something in your teeth. I am that friend.
Not a golden nugget, Terry. Not a golden
That's a
nugget.
good friend. That's a good friend.
Nasty.
I don't care if I don't know you. If you smile and I see there's something in your teeth, I'm going to lean over, tap you, and I'm going to go, you've got something in your teeth. Very polite, and just keep on with the conversation. I'm not going to skip a beat or anything. That's just, I would hope anybody would do that for me.
I could see that with you too.
That's just, it's me.
And
I love it
that's why you're an amazing friend.
sometimes.
Speaking of amazing friends, let's see who's best friend. We haven't talked about who is Walter's best friend.
Oh,
You know, we had this conversation. We got that.
Uh-oh.
We got to ask
Walter.
Terry the other day.
What have you done?
Walter Allen. Yes.
Walter.
Because
It's my
The whole name.
Walter Allen having a difficult or awkward conversation, having a best friend
Hmm.
can help make that easier. So who helps you seek to understand? Who
I was like
helps
you're
you?
trying to plug yourself for the best friend slot.
Hold on, because
It's
I'm
not-
curious about this, because
it's
Walter
not
tells
Te-
everybody
it's
not to say
it's
that.
not Terry.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's not John. Terry, who do you think my best friend is?
I think your best friend is Dean Meads.
That will be correct. That will be correct.
Y'all getting me in trouble with Mrs. Sheehy.
That will be correct. Mrs. Lisa Meads. She would be my best friend.
Good
That's why you
answer.
marry your best friend, right?
That's
Good
right.
answer.
Yes.
Good answer.
That is. So to put a bow on our conversation, I would to some of the stuff that we've talked about. Hey, it's not necessarily difficult conversation. It might just be awkward. Seek to understand, treat that person the way that you or your most loved one you would want them to be, and just open and understanding and making sure you don't have that hard deadline, so you take the time to give them the respect that they need.